Hi, this is a quick video on Quilters Creative Touch software version 4 standard, and I think this will also work in beginnings. But this will show you how to go back and stitch part of a design, say if your thread breaks or just anything that happens that you've got to go back and stitch part of your design over. On my machine does not stop if my thread runs out, so many times I stitch a whole row only to find out that the thread ran out somewhere here in the middle. Very frustrating. So the first thing you need to do is find where the thread ran out. And sometimes that's hard to do. You kind of have to trace back looking at the pattern to find out where it is on your quilt. Or sometimes if you look underneath your quilt, there's a bobbin thread hanging and you can tell about where it is. Okay, so once you discover that point, and I'm going to assume that my point was about right here where my cursor is. What you want to do is move your machine over to that area. Before you move your machine, you may have to click on the toolbox and release carriage. Okay, and then move your carriage or your machine over to the spot where it ran out or stopped stitching, and make sure your machine is threaded properly. Many times when the thread breaks, it tends to coil up and come unthreaded, so make sure everything's threaded correctly. Put your cursor as close to where you want it to start stitching as possible, and then come down and tap Repair Pattern, and then select Closest Stitch. Now the machine is going to try to find, or the software is going to try to find the closest stitch to where your machine is at that point. Mine's pretty close, so let's say that's where it is. But maybe it's a little bit further behind, so you can click on the Trace Back button or the Trace Forward button until you get exactly where you want to be. And I'm just clicking, trying to find a good spot for us to see. Okay, let's say it's right about there. And I usually go back, like if my stitching had stopped right where this cursor is, I would actually go back about 10 stitches and start from there, because you want to lock in all the stitches that were sewn previously that might have broken. So once you get that where you want it and where you want to start stitching, you'll see that everything in blue is already stitched, and everything that is in the light blue but is dotted is going to stitch next. So look at your quilt and make sure that all of that is right. You also may have to nudge your machine, because your machine may not, the needle of your machine may not be right on that stitching line. If that's the case, use these nudge buttons at the bottom, and they actually move your machine until it is right on top of the stitches where you want to start stitching. Okay, when you get that where you would like it, select Pull Bobbin, hold on to the top thread that's coming out of the needle and pull it kind of tight, and it is going to take one stitch and pull up your bobbin thread. So at that point, grab your thread coming out of the needle and your bobbin thread and hold on to them, and then select Sew. The machine is going to move back, and now you can cut those threads close to the quilt top, and your quilt top, the software will stitch out the remainder of your quilt. And that's it. Pretty simple.